I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. Elevation, protocol, rising above the chaos, taking control. My value's not negotiable, my worth is my law. Surrounding myself with excellence, that's what I saw. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. This is the elevation, protocol, rising above the chaos, taking control. My value's not negotiable, my worth is my law. Surrounding myself with excellence, that's what I saw. This is the elevation, protocol, rising above the chaos, taking control. My value's not negotiable, my worth is my law. Surrounding myself with excellence, that's what I saw. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. Bridges to greatness, demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. My standards draw the line here. My standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls.
All right, how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host Xander, where we're talking about this, that, and everything in between. Um, we're still working on what we got going on with TikTok. Short. Um, Actually, we don't really have many updates because the update that we're supposed to be talking about is the topic of today's show. We're going to be telling you guys what's going on with the Strait, what's going on with the discussions with Iran, and some other things that I found out. So I thought that you guys might want to know about that. Um, Real quick. For those of you that was here over the last couple of days, I did tell you that I was going to give you fellas some detailed information about different type of dress shoes for those of you that were looking into doing that, because I know Stephen was looking into making some adjustments. So I put that in there today before the show so that you would be able to take a look at it after the night show. And there's information going in every day, every few days, every week in our membership about stuff that's related to the topics that we're discussing. Um, so it works itself out when you guys do go and check that thing out. Now we are live 7 nights a week, and we do not let the sun rise without going live, but we don't always start on time. So we ask you guys to like and subscribe, and then hit the notification button on all the shows, so that you don't miss out on nothing that we got going on. Typically, first 15 minutes of the show, we kind of give you like an opener, let you know what's going on, any updates that we found out, any guess what's, and then after that, we kind of dive right into every topic. Now, right now, we're streaming live off of YouTube, YouTube Shorts, and Twitch. So anybody who's watching the show right now, if you would like to comment appropriately, feel free to do so. Appropriate comments about appropriate topics is preferred. Um, so I want to make sure that you guys understand that. So this isn't a left wing or right wing podcast. We are covering a political topic today, but it's specifically about how it impacts you, not so much any political beliefs that we may have. And since we're live 7 nights a week, we have different topics. Yesterday, Sunday, we have questions and comments from the fans. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is about business and politics, because on Monday we talk about today's Monday, how politics negatively impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money. Tuesday, we talk about different ways that you could invest, save, budget, and earn money in different ways, including in person, brick and mortar, starting up your own business, and then digital nomad stuff. I personally prefer for you to transition from working for somebody else in a 9 to 5 in-person brick and mortar situation to working for yourself online, where you can travel the world while working, or pay somebody else to do the work for you and you travel the world without having to do anything, because you have more freedom. And that's what we're supposed to be working towards, is freedom, not just financial freedom, but freedom of time. You have more freedom to do stuff when you don't have to show up at a specific place at a specific time at the discretion of somebody else. Then we talk about different countries around the world that you could potentially live and invest in, which is easier to do when you're working off your computer or not having to work at all and your standard of living is covered, which is why we do it in that order. Then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we give you guys information about self improvement, self development, relationship topics, socialization, networking, building your brand, discussing raises, promotions, um, talking about retirement, severance packages, because you can actually promote your way out of the door if you're getting fired in an appropriate situation, as opposed to you wilding out, flipping tables, and acting a fool and getting escorted out by police. So there's always a right and wrong way to do everything. And if you do it the right way, you can benefit on your way in and benefit on your way out. There's plenty of ways to negotiate things. And that's what we talk about on the show, is how for you to find another way. Now, with that being said, after we go through all of that information, then we try to emphasize and stress to you the importance of building your 20 and 30-year plan. Because if you figure out where you want to be at in 20 or 30 years, when you're 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, um, and what type of standard of living you would like to have, the details of that, the cost of that, then you can reverse engineer how you're going to build that. Because if in the event that you are building your future in your present, you can make your later greater. The ability for two $30,000 a year income to live at $40,000 or 45,000 a year and invest the other 15,000 a year and cross over well over 200 grand inside of 10 years, and probably make themselves a half million to 750,000 inside of 20 years, depending on how they invest, is the ability to go from um, living modestly without having to financially suffer, versus lifestyle creep, where the more money you make, the more money you spend, and you're always living paycheck to paycheck, where really all it takes is 3 consecutive weeks of unpayment, and you can find yourself homeless, or really stressed out looking for another job, right? It's really the magnitude of things. So today we're going to be covering the fact that, I mean, their discussions over the weekend, it's over right now. I mean, the talks had collapsed as of April 12th of 2026. The United States and the Iran in Islamabad, Pakistan negotiations had ended without an agreement at that time. And we're going to keep following up on it to figure out where they're going to be at with that, because if things don't go the way we want it to go, it gets worse for us financially. After weeks of tense back channel negotiations, that fragile ceasefire, the one that gave us a sliver of hope in the Middle East, is officially on life support, where officials describe the outcome of those discussions as a deadlock. We now have a good idea of what was secretly proposed in those closed door meetings in Islamabad, and we now know what was rejected. And we have a chilling, clear picture from military experts about what's likely to happen the moment the truce expires. Because it's a 2 week truce, and the truce started last week. So we got like a week left. So for 6 weeks, a brutal conflict has raged, kicked off by a joint U.S. Israeli attack back in February on the 28th of 2026. And we have seen the assassinations of Iran's supreme leader, missile attacks ripping across the region, and a crippling blockade of one of the world's most critical waterways. Now, the negotiations in Pakistan were seen as the last real chance to pull back from the brink of a much wider, more devastating war. But after 21 grueling hours, the American delegation, led by Vice President J.D. Vance, boarded their plane and left with no deal. So tonight we're going to break down how this all fell apart, and we will reveal the 10-point proposal from Iran and the 15-point counter ultimatum from the United States. We'll analyze the single biggest sticking point to these talks from the very beginning, the Strait of Hormuz. And crucially, we'll connect the crisis that's going on overseas to something deeply concerning that's changing right here at home, a new military draft policy that could affect an entire generation of young Americans. Yeah, this is going to be the story of how peace failed and what that failure means for the rest of us here in America. The setting for this diplomatic endgame was the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, Pakistan. So for over a day, a little bit longer, the city was practically in lockdown. Thousands of troops and parliamentary forces secured the area as American and Iranian delegations held the highest level face to face talks between two countries since before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Now, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The war, now heading into its seventh week, had already claimed thousands of lives and sent shockwaves through the global economy. The American team was a who's who of Trump's administration inner circle. The delegation was led by, personally, J.D. Vance, and included President Trump's son in law, veteran negotiator Jared Kushner, alongside special envoy Steve Witkoff. Their Iranian counterparts were headed by Parliament Speaker Mohammed Begar Khalifba. Hopefully, I said that correctly. And for 21 hours, with Pakistani mediators shuttling between them, they tried to hammer out a deal to end that war. Now, the talks officially ended without an agreement on the morning of Sunday, April 12th, yesterday, before hopping on his plane. Vice President Vance gave a short, grim statement to the press. He didn't mince words. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. That's what he said. And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. They have chosen not to accept our terms. Vance made it clear in that statement that the United States had laid out its final and allegedly best offer. And the main sticking point was an ironclad long term promise from Iran to never seek a nuclear weapon. So they can't go after nukes anymore. From the Iranian side of things, the story was one of American overreach and an inability to build trust. Speaker Kwalabaf said Iran had offered forward looking initiatives, but that the Americans had ultimately failed to earn his delegation's confidence. Each side blamed the other for making impossible demands. A classic post mortem when diplomatic talks go south. But this was more than just a diplomatic failure. It was the starting gun on a very dangerous outcome. The talks were only possible because of a temporary 2 week ceasefire that Pakistan had brokered, right? Now, that ceasefire is set to expire on April 22nd, which is next week, Wednesday, with no deal and no talks scheduled, and both sides digging in their heels. The world is now watching to see what happens when the clock runs out. Steven says, hopefully these talks pick back up soon. They don't need to talk about nothing else. That man need to go ahead and agree before they blow him up. I under so here's the thing. In my personal observation, some communication does need to start back up in some way, shape, or form. Um, a good faith agreement on some terms to extend the negotiation for the things that nobody wants to agree on. That way, they're not going back into being bombing next week, Wednesday, because once they start going under attack, there's no way for them to continue to negotiate with their attacker. Nobody's going to get jumped and say, ooh, let's talk this out. Now, if I'm getting my ass whooped, I'm fighting back. So we're not able to talk peace while I'm in the midst of defending myself. The ability to offer something to get the extension, since the argument about the straight might be the one thing that allows for every other thing to be negotiated down the line. You know, agree to the straight and then negotiate everything around the straight in order to allow for a continuated discussion. Because you can always, pull out of the deal if y'all don't reach a final conclusion on something else. But if you don't give the one thing that Trump wanted was that straight, and if you don't give him that, by Wednesday, you're gonna blow your ass out. Now, whether or not the other demands that you have get met, and whether or not the other demands that Donald Trump has gets met, isn't as important as the control of the strait. So, um, this is one of those things that we got to take into heavy consideration. And he's only got a week left to consider it because tomorrow's Wednesday. Well, no, tomorrow's Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. Today's Monday. Monday night, Tuesday morning. So, today's Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Uh, um, which means he's only got like 8 days left, 8 or 9 days left to figure this out. And you got to realize that whatever the time clock was, whether it's high noon or whatever, if if it's going down at high noon, then it's going down at high noon. Don't let the Bluetooth call drop or the satellite call drop at 11:55, and they don't get the call until 12:01, and strikes start happening before they can agree. That it's going to be chaos. It's going to be pandemonium. Now, President Trump's initial statement painted a stark picture vowing to impose a full Navy blockade on the Strait of Hormuz immediately, which is supposed to happen like as soon as this discussion is not going to work out. And the brief pause is over. The language of war is going to be back on. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe and mash those reaction buttons as we go through this because we got a lot of information today. So, why were these talks doomed from the start? To get it, you have to look at one narrow stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. It's all about geography and money. This choke point, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest, is the jugular vein of the global energy supply. Before this war, about 20% of the world's total oil consumption passed through its channels every single day. Whoever controls the strait holds incredible leverage over the entire global economy. When the United States and Israel launched their first attacks on February 28th, Iran's response was swift and strategic. Along with missile strikes on U.S. bases in that region, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, effectively shut down the strait and they warned off all maritime traffic, reportedly laid an unknown number of naval mines in the main shipping lines and attacked merchant ships. For over a month, traffic through this vital artery slowed to a trickle, sparking a global shipping crisis and sending oil prices through the roof. That's why we're talking about it, right? Because our gas went up. A lot of us are seeing gas prices $5 in some cities and states, 5.50, almost $6 in some cities and states around the country, higher than what we seen at the last time Trump was in office. If y'all remember what it was like. Now, this act of economic warfare became the heart of the fight in Islamabad. The temporary ceasefire agreed on April 8th, which was like last week, Wednesday or Thursday, was supposed to lead to the complete, immediate, safe opening of that strait. But that's not what happened. Instead, Iran started a kind of economic extortion. They created what they called a hazardous area over the normal shipping lines, blaming the very mines that they had laid. They then forced ships into their own waters where they charged insane tolls for the passage, with some reports citing fees as high as $2 million per ship. The United States called it what it was, an illegal shakedown that flies in the face of international maritime law. The American position laid out by the Trump administration was very simple: guaranteed safe and unrestricted passage for all ships, period. End of story. President Trump announced that U.S. Navy destroyers had started clearing those mines, framing it as a service to the world. He also took a swipe at allies in Europe and Asia, especially China, for depending on the United States to secure the waterways that are essential for their own economies. Because nobody helped the United States do this. The U.S. did this on their own, right? Iran's position was just as rigid. They demanded that any deal recognize their control over the strait and their right to manage who passes through it, which completely contradicts the whole negotiation. This fundamental clash of unrestricted freedom versus sovereign control was a gap too wide to bridge. Iran saw the strait as its most powerful bargaining chip, a way to inflict economic pain and force concession. The United States saw Iran's control as a global security threat that had to be broken. Even during the fragile ceasefire, the strait was effectively closed. Only a handful of ships that paid Iran's fees were allowed to pass under IRGC escort. President Trump reacted with fury, accusing Iran of stalling, and threatening to escalate from mine clearing to a full on naval blockade to make sure that it would be all or none. Everybody's going through or nobody's going through, right? Now, the Strait of Hormuz wasn't just an issue at the talks, it was the issue, period. It was the entire conflict in maritime. And it's not just a miniature thing, it is a battle of money, military power, and national pride. So the failure to solve this guaranteed that everything else that they were supposed to be trying to discuss would fail too. Thanks to leaks from officials close to the talks, we're getting a clear picture of Iran's opening moves. Now, there's a sweeping 10-point proposal that went way beyond just the current conflict. And this wasn't just a plan for a ceasefire, it was a blueprint for a whole new regional order, with Iran's security and economic needs at its very center. And this was the document that President Trump, after first calling it a workable basis, ultimately threw out as totally inadequate. First and foremost, predictably, Iran demanded the complete and total lifting of all sanctions. Not just the primary sanctions from the United States, but also the secondary sanctions that punishes other countries and companies for doing business with Iran. Tehran was asking for a full-on return to the global economy, unfreezing billions in assets and letting its oil and banking sectors run free. Now, this has been Iran's main goal for decades, and they saw their chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz as the key to finally getting it. Second, Iran demanded international recognition of its inalienable right to a domestic nuclear program. Uh, what? So this is going to include the right to enrich uranium on its own soil while they publicly deny wanting nuclear weapons. This demand aimed to legitimize the very infrastructure the West fears could be used to build nuclear weapons. It was a direct rejection of the US goal of zero enrichment and called for wiping away all UN and IAEA resolutions against its programs. Third, as we've discussed, was making their control over the Strait of Hormuz official. And everybody accepts it, hands down, undisputed. Iran's proposal wanted the deal to recognize its sovereignty and its right to oversee traffic through the waterways. And this would have basically normalized the system of tolls and managed access that they had already started, turning an international strait into something more like a national with a big ass fucking toll on it. Fourth out of 10 demands, and maybe the most audacious, the plan included a demand for war reparations. I told y'all we were going to discuss the fact that there's like $44 billion worth of claim damage estimated. And if it was rebuilt over the Trump administration for the remaining 2 years of his stay, we would be looking at approximately $500 million a month worth of repair costs if we were to agree to that. Now, I mean, if they stretch it over the course of 10 years, it might be a little less. But when you imagine, you know, $500 million at a time over the course of the next, so $500 million a month, that's what? 100 and something $1 million a week, which is way more than the $13 million a week that we were spending in Iraq when we blew up Iraq. That's a lot of money. Iran insisted that the United States and its allies pay to rebuild everything damaged in the 6 week war. They weren't just asking for a ceasefire, they were demanding the United States foot the bill for a war it had started. From the American side, this was a complete non starter. I understand that Trump did mention at some point that he might consider aiding in rebuilding the infrastructure, but this is seen as Iran trying to profit from a conflict that Iran had escalated. Michael said, sounds like we're being held captive by Iran. Well, this is the kind of stuff that they were talking about, which is the reason why the negotiations seemed absurd. Because while Iran still controls the strait, Iran's infrastructure is suffering. United States poor economy is suffering, but everybody else is not really hurting off of this. You've got the bottom 50% of America really feeling the pressure right now with prices going up everywhere, right? But the top 50% of America could give two shits. Outside of the family members that are going to war and not coming back, there isn't a lot going on our side of things. So when you ask who's the victor, everybody loses a little bit. Iran loses a lot more than everybody else because everything that they got going on over there is being blown to smithereens. But this is a huge, huge issue. And that's just the first four out of 10 that they put out there, right? Make sure that you guys like and subscribe and mash those reaction buttons. And if you got other comments, hey, put your 2 cents in, just like Stephen and Michael. Our fifth uh, understood observation from Iran, the plan called for a complete end of the war, defined as broadly as possible. This meant stopping all US and allied military strikes, not just in Iran, but across the entire Middle East, everywhere. It specifically demanded the ceasefire be extended to Lebanon, where fighting between Israel and Hezbollah had been raging on forever, which wasn't about this, right? This was Iran trying to use the talks to protect the entire network of regional allies. Now, while we don't have the full list of 10 demands, these five pillars show just how ambitious Iran's position was. They weren't negotiating from a place of weakness. They believed that they control the strait, and while they control the strait, their ability to withstand attack gave them the power to rewrite the rules of the Middle East. And it was a maximalist stance designed to see how far the United States would bend. As we now know, the answer was not very far at all. If Iran's plan was a new blueprint for the Middle East, the American response was a demand for a total surrender. Now, the 15-point counterproposal, which one official called the Trump administration's red lines, wasn't really a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. It aimed not just to end the current war, but to permanently tear down Iran's military and strategic power, effectively taking it off the board as a regional player. The absolute heart of the US plan was the complete and verifiable dismantlement of Iran's nuclear programs. And this went far beyond the old JCPOA deal. The demand was an end to all uranium enrichment. Full stop. Hello, Stuart. Um, Stewart asked an interesting question. He asked, "Are you scared of Iran?" I don't understand how that actually works with the United States Iran discussion and how what's about to happen will impact the rest of us. So I'll leave that question to you. Are you scared of Iran? Because I'm not going to come from a political position of whether or not I'm for or against the war, whether or not I'm for or against their decisions, whether or not I have any concerns of them coming over here or us going over there, because the catalyst of this discussion first talks about the geopolitical problem that currently exists, and then taper it down to exactly how it impacts not just us, but our children, which, from a position of uniformity, if your kids are going to be negatively impacted by the results of political conflict, you should probably know what the conflict is, right? Okay, so why did Hillary sell Iran enriched uranium? Well, that has nothing to do with today's discussion either, because Hillary is not involved in politics and hasn't been in politics since she tried to run against Obama in 2008. And before that, she wasn't in politics since Bill Clinton was in office. So, not really a interesting question to you can answer that question what you think happened, but that doesn't really apply to today. So, remember I said this stop of uranium enrichment, it requires physically taking apart major nuclear factories, including the well-known site at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfana uranium conversion facilities. The Natanz, Fordo, and Isfana uranium conversion facilities. I don't even know if I said those correct the second time, but those three were supposed to be dismantled. Now, on top of that, the United States demanded it be allowed to take Iran's existing stockpile of highly enriched uranium out of the country to make sure that it didn't have anything. This was a demand for total nuclear disarmament. Oh, well, I appreciate you coming to the show tonight, Stuart, but I'm going to have to let you sit down somewhere. The second major pillar was to put a chokehold on Iran's ballistic missile program. For years, critics of the original JCPOA complained that it ignored Iran's growing missile arsenal, which directly threatens U.S. allies and bases across the region. The American proposal aimed to fix that, demanding strict limits on the development, production, and testing of these weapons. Third out of 15 would be the United States demanding that Iran completely cut off all funding, training, and support for its network of proxy militants across the region. Now, the 15-point plan explicitly named groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, requiring Iran to abandon them and dismantle their offensive power. Now, this struck at a very core of Iran's strategy of forward defense. using these groups to project power and tie down its enemies far from its own borders. Fourth, and you'd expect this, this was the demand for the complete, unconditional, and immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to all international shipping. The proposal made it clear that there would be no acceptance of Iranian oversight or transit fees. Freedom of navigation was a non negotiable principle. All right. Fifth, the American plan flatly rejected the idea of war reparations. The United States' position was that Iran was the aggressor for escalating the conflict by closing the strait and launching proximity attacks. So, the idea that the United States would pay for damages was dismissed out of hand. Now, the rest of the 15-point plan likely included demands for intrusive snap inspections of any site, anytime, the release of all foreign and dual national prisoners, and an end to state sponsored cyber attacks. All in all, the US proposal wasn't a documented try to find a middle ground, it was a list of terms for surrender. It demanded that Iran voluntarily give up every major strategic card that they held in their hands. It's a nuclear potential, its missile deterrent, its regional influence, and its control over the Strait of Hormuz. For a regime built on resisting American pressure, agreeing to these terms would have been political suicide. The gap between the Iranian 10-point and the American 15-point plan, the ultimatums wasn't a gap, it was a canyon. And in that canyon, the hopes for a peaceful end kind of died. Right? But you can't understand why these talks failed without looking at the ghost in the room, the nuclear deal from a decade ago, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, to get the deep distrust and the extreme positions of 2026, you have to look back at how that 2015 agreement was made and how it was eventually destroyed. The JCPOA was a huge diplomatic achievement. It wasn't built on trust, it was built on verification. For the first time, it put Iran's nuclear program in a box. In exchange for lifting crippling sanctions, Iran agreed to a drastic limit. It gave up 98% of its enriched uranium, dismantled thousands of centrifuges, and filled the core of its plutonium reactor with concrete. The deal also brought in the toughest inspection regimes in history, giving the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, unprecedented access to monitor Iran's declared nuclear sites. The whole idea was to push Iran's breakout time, how long it would be needed to make enough materials for one bomb, from a few months to over a year, giving the world plenty of time to catch and respond to any cheating. But the deal was attacked from the moment it was signed. Opponents, including at that time candidate Donald Trump and the Israeli government, said it was full of holes. They pointed to the sunset clauses, which let some restrictions expire after 10 or 15 years, potentially giving Iran a path to a bomb down the road. They also slammed the denial for what it didn't cover: Iran's ballistics missiles and its support for proxy groups. In 2018, President Trump pulled the United States out of the JCPOA, calling it the worst deal ever, and slammed Iran with crushing maximum pressure, those sanctions. That decision set the stage for the crisis that we're in now. Free from its side of the bargains, Iran started systemically breaking the old deal's limits. It began enriching uranium to higher purities, stockpiling way more than what it was allowed, and firing up advanced centrifuges. By the time this current war started, experts believed Iran's breakout time had shrunk back down to just a matter of weeks, maybe even days. And this history hung over everything in Islamabad. The Iranian delegation came to the table feeling deeply betrayed. They had stuck to the original deal only to watch the United States walk away and then punish them anyway. That's why their 10-point plan demanded not just sanctions relief, but also formal recognition of their right to enrich uranium. They were determined not to have their programs bargained away again. The American delegation, on the other hand, saw the JCPOA as a failed experiment that only delayed Iran's nuclear ambitions, and it didn't stop them from doing what they were doing in the first place. From the United States perspective, Iran had simply used the money from the old deal to fund its militias and missiles for today's conflicts. That's why their 15-point proposal was so absolute, demanding zero enrichment and the complete destruction of the program's infrastructure. They weren't interested in putting the program back in a box this time. They wanted to smash the box to pieces and then haul away all the debris. Right? As you guys continue to come through, make sure that you guys like and subscribe, mash those reaction buttons because we're about halfway through this. Okay. So the nuclear issue wasn't just a technical disagreement, it was a clash of two completely different stories. Iran saw a history of American betrayal and demanded guarantees that it wouldn't be tricked again. America saw a history of Iranian deception and demanded a level of surrender that Tehran would never accept. That JCPOA, once celebrated as a victory for diplomacy, now looks like a monument to how hard it is to rebuild trust once it's been completely shattered. Now, while all this diplomatic and military drama unfolds thousands of miles away, the consequences are hitting home right here in America, and they're hitting hard. The war with Iran isn't some distant headline. For millions of American families, it has become a painful reality affecting their wallets, their sense of security, and their children's future. The first place most people felt it was at the gas pump. The shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz sent shockwaves through the global energy markets. With 20% of the world's oil supply choked off, prices have soared across the country. Gas has climbed past $4, $5, and $6 a gallon, adding billions in extra costs to family budgets. And this isn't just an inconvenience, it's like a new tax on everything that we benefit from. The cost to transport goods has skyrocketed, which means you're paying more for food and everyday items at the grocery store. For farmers in rural areas and independent truckers, also, the squeeze is especially painful. Small businesses already running on the margins are facing a crisis of rising energy and shipping costs. This economic pain is fueling a growing wave of public anger. Polls show that a majority of Americans now think that the war was a mistake and don't like how it's being handled. Protests, which started small, have grown in size alongside other protests that we have about immigration, and intensity is starting to occur in major cities. The political scene has become incredibly polarized with bitter debates in Congress over the wars, funding, and its goals. Online, the information space is a battlefield of its own, filled with rumors, disinformation, and a deepening trust of anything that the government says, which is one of the reasons why, while we were covering all of these topics, Twitter got a bug up their butt and didn't want us to keep talking about it. He said, as a result of the war, I just stockpiled toilet paper, now having over 80 rolls and progressive soaps, now have over 70 cans before pieces go up. Oh, the progressive soup? Yes, sir. I've 70 cans. That's not enough. 70 cans. I can eat be, between 4 and 6 cans a day. 70 cans. That's like 1 month's worth of. I would have like 200 or 400 cans of progressive soup. I would have 200 cans of progressive soup, 5 boxes of the saltine or 20 boxes of the saltine crackers. I would be buying those 20-pound bags of great value rice so that I could boil the rice and then put each can over a bed of rice, thus stretching the usage of the cans, where those 200 cans might last me 100 days. But 100 days is not quite 6 months. 80 rolls of toilet paper is a good idea, but you don't need 80 rolls of toilet paper when you can just take a shower after you poop. Now, I might need like 15 or 20 of those Tide Pod or some dish detergent or something like that. But toilet paper, in my eyes, is not as big of a necessity as the soap required after you use the toilet paper. Um, that's just my thought because at least here in America, your toilet is next to your shower. So do your business, take a shower, come out. You should likely be cleaner. That's just my personal opinion. You know, for those individuals that poop 2 to 3 times a day, you should be taking 4 to 6 showers a day. You should never be musty. And for those folks who's gonna stop using their car because of gas and start riding bicycles to get places, you're gonna need more showers every day anyway. For those people who are going from private transportation, driving themselves to public transportation, taking buses in inner city to save money on gas, you're gonna need them extra showers every day anyway. That's my thought. But maybe the most profound and worrying development that we've had so far is a major change to the military draft. Back in December of 2025, as part of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2026, President Donald Trump signed a law that completely changes the Selective Service System, SSS. Starting on December 18th, 2026, the United States will switch from manual self registration to a system of automatic registration. Here's what that means: every male in the United States between 18 and 26 will be automatically entered into the draft pool. The government will no longer wait for young men to sign up. I just want to know what y'all think about that. That is huge, right? Starting the end of this year, they are going to add uh mandatory enlistment of every man over the age of 18, between 18 and 26. So this is pretty crazy. And I'm gonna put up a question for you guys because I want to know what y'all think about this. And I just uh so here, check this out. I'm gonna put this up for y'all real quick. What do y'all think about the draft? Should we start training our kids for the draft? And since all the men are being enlisted, should we make the women enlist too? Because the women are talking about equality. In Asia, everybody goes to war, right? First 2 years of service after you're born. Real, real quick, man. Steven was the first one to die. And I don't blame you, buddy. I don't blame you. I lean on that exact same observation. I lean on that exact same observation. Um, the truth of the matter is, they want to be treated. They want to be treated as equals. They need to be drafted too. Shit, because this is gonna suck. This is gonna suck. What is happening right now is that um, if we continue with conflict, if America continues with conflict with other countries for whatever reason, our kids are going to get called into action regardless. I, I'm starting to think that we need to be teaching our kids gun safety. We need to be teaching our kids how to load firearms, discharge firearms, and not just the ones that we buy and keep at our houses, but we need to go to the range and teach our kids how to use sniper rifles, AR-15s, M16s, AK-47s, like Glocks with switches and everything to that effect. Because the more they know when they get drafted, teach them all of the illegal moves from USC so that they know how to deal with some hand-to-hand combat and a little bit of minor military training so that they're better off if they get pulled into action. And if they don't get pulled into action, they can protect themselves. But I'm gonna leave that question up there. Make sure y'all like and subscribe and mash those reaction buttons and let me know what y'all think. Uh, should we enlist women too? Because yeah, this is gonna be crazy. Instead of the selective service, we will use federal and state data from the Department of Motor Vehicles, federal student loan applications, tax records, and immigration services to automatically register everybody for war. Like legit. That's where we are right now. Okay. And this doesn't just apply to United States citizens. It covers nearly all male residents, including green card holders, refugees, asylum seekers, and even undocumented immigrants. So, all the folks that hadn't been evicted out of the country under the age of 26 getting registered for war by the end of this year and likely to get pulled into action. For decades, the legal requirement to register was very confusing. Technically, failing to register was a felony, but prosecutions were extremely rare, and instead, the government used indirect penalties like ineligibility for federal student aid or government jobs, which made registration feel optional for many people. Automatic enrollment removes both the burden of self registration and the illusion of choice. It normalizes the idea that this entire generation of young men is on call if Congress ever activates conscription. Now, to be clear, this isn't a return to the draft just yet. The United States military has been an all volunteer force since 1973, technically. Okay. Let me take down this. I had to put the question back up there every now and again, but I can't see my face. Shoot. I'll put it down, son, because I want to see my face. Shoot. Gen Zs ain't ready for that. That's what I'm trying to told you. Exactly what I'm trying to told you. The kids don't know what they got going on. Now they was out there with them Glock switches, getting they ops while their mama was taking them to school and stuff. Now they can take that skill set and take their ass to war. Everybody between 18 and 26. Now that means January 1st of 2027, everybody born in 2001 going back what, 5 years? Well, because 2001 would be 26, and then go back 7 years from 2001 to 2008, they're going to get drafted or qualify for drafting, more per se, because you're no longer qualified for or no longer gonna be eligible for selection for the draft after the age of 26. Doesn't mean they won't call your card because you're already on the list, but everybody that is 26, which means you were born in 2000, will be enlisted. And everybody who is 26 in January of 2027 would have been born in 2020 in 2001, and 7 years before that would be 1993. All of y'all about to get it. Or no, I'm sorry, going in the opposite direction, 2008, because it's everybody younger than 2001, which would be people that were born by 2008. So from 2001 to 2008, y'all are about to be added onto the war list, and then 2009, y'all the next ones to be added on the war list. So the Gen Zs, the Generation A's, the whatever, the FB2Ks, whatever you want to call the kids that's coming out this next couple groups of folks, everybody gonna be in the same boat. Now, Steven, me, you, Michael, we're good. We're good. We're so far out of it. Some of us is old and decrepit. We we qualify for disability. We don't have the stature to be military combat. But in all honesty, unless you cut your big toe off or some shit, your ass is probably going to war, right? So even though mandatory draft registration for men has been in effect again since 1980, automatic registration will not start until December 18th of 2026. Recognizing this change is a huge deal. It makes a potential future draft much faster and easier to carry out. Legally, it has never been optional, but weak enforcement, confusing messaging, and voluntary compliance language has made it feel like a choice for many men. So anybody who hasn't registered after 1980, maybe didn't know, maybe wasn't told correctly, could have. gotten themselves into a world of trouble with their government if a draft came about. But if they lucky and got injured before they qualified, then registration would not have mattered for them. If they came over here, I got something for them where it's not on the agenda for me. Glad I was born in the 80s. Look, me too. Me too. Well, see, if they came with the marshals, they would be coming with okay, so here's the thing. Since 1980, failure to register has technically been a felony with possible prison time and a large fine. But in practice, prosecution has been extremely rare. The system depended on men taking the initiative to register, which is voluntary compliance. So the agencies and even SSS officials sometimes described it as a free will action, which blurred the line between legal obligation and personal choice. They also threw it in there. Yeah, I don't remember ever doing it either. I didn't even know it was a thing until I started covering the topic today. Nobody told me. And when I started going to college at 27, I was 1 year outside of the scope. Everyone else was being offered Pell Grants and GI Bills to enlist in the military. So they were voluntarily signing up because they were being offered a sign on bonus. So even though it was legally mandatory, instead of them putting everybody in a federal prison, uh, uh, court martialing everybody, what they did was they bribed broke Americans with a payout. And that put a lot of broke Americans, a lot of troubled Americans who didn't know what they wanted to do with their lives and they just enlisted in the army to get a new beginning, or somebody who fucked up their future and they just joined the army so that they could have a place of belonging, whatever the case may be. Not everybody volunteered because they had pride in their country. People joined because they had a hidden agenda, and that hidden agenda benefited them enlisting. But it was supposed to be mandatory. They were supposed to sign up regardless, but they got bribed to do so. Yeah, the system that depended on men taking the initiative, gone, right? Over time, the government relied more on indirect penalties like loss of federal aid, some jobs you couldn't get hired on and you didn't know why, and immigration benefits that some people would not qualify for instead of the criminal cases. So a lot of people only discovered the requirement when they applied for something and were denied. Where if they were told that they got denied for some type of federal funding, it would be because they fail to enlist or they fail to do their governmental duties, something to that effect, reinforcing the sense that it was an optional box that you could ignore until it mattered. Because it'll be like some terms and conditions. You must be part registered as part of the U.S. forces, blah 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 blah, in order to get this benefit kind of thing. Just like the GI Bill, right? Officials are spinning the change as a cost saving update, a way to modernize an old system, and officials are stressing that this change was planned long before the current war had escalated. But the timing, right in the middle of a major war, hasn't been lost on anyone. So for young Americans and their families, this news has been a source of massive anxiety. The theoretical idea of being drafted has suddenly become very real because we're currently in a conflict that doesn't look like it's going to end by June. And if for some reason it lingers until January, there is a strong possibility that a handful of good men and women that never thought that they would, not women, a good handful of men, because the draft is only coming to get the fellas, that they're just going to be gone. Whatever they thought they were going to do with their lives isn't going to happen anymore because they're just going to be gone until conflict is over. And trying to get an exemption, deferment, or opt out by ignorance or protest gets a lot more complicated when a registration is automatic. Now you got to understand, registration for the draft, like you said, Stephen, They got to come and get you. And if they come and get you, you got something for them. It's one of those situations where you're going to fight them to the death to keep them from taking you alive to send you to war. Because at the end of the day, when you file your taxes, they got your current address, current phone number. They know where you work, so they can come and get you a job or snatch you up out of your house. ICE agents. You've got uh, federal Pell Grants. Anybody that's going to school. If you registered for financial aid, they know what university to go to. They can snatch you out of your college class. You understand? If they call your card and tell you it's time to show up, that you got to show up by a certain day at a certain time, and you don't meet that deadline, if they know where you are. Your driver's license should have your most recent driver's license address on there, where they can go to that address and come and find you. Or whoever's at that address knows where you are so that they can go look for you. And MPs might just make it their mission to hunt you down and collect you from anywhere. And with the Gen Zs right now in 2026 that are on social media about every little insignificant thing in life, bro, all it takes is for them to find your social media handle and they gonna scoop you up during a live stream and put you on the front line. You're gonna be live streaming from Baghdad. They got me, y'all. They got me. First person view like a Blair Witch project. They done put me out here in all this sand, y'all. You can't do the military or fast food because I don't take orders. Look, I work for myself because I don't like being told what to do. Not gonna cap. I have always been good at following instructions, but I never liked doing it. Therefore, I work for myself. When I had no other option, I worked for somebody else, and I was one of the best damn workers they ever had. However, I never liked being told what to do. I would not be good in the military. My platoon would be doing push ups from sundown to sun up and then sundown again because I'm going to be the one defiant one that you just can't break. If I didn't get court martialed, if I didn't get dishonorably discharged for non-compliance, I would definitely not get promoted. Because the only thing that you can probably do that I wouldn't have a problem with is point at a target and tell me to take action. That is probably the only other thing. But everything else, drop down and give me, I'm too pretty for that. You drop down and give me and make some change while you're down there. I ain't do it. He tell me drop down and give him 20. I said, drop down and give me a 10 and two fives. I ain't got time for that shit. Shoot. I just know where I don't belong, right? Now, while officials say that this isn't a return to the draft, some analysts are going to argue that it significantly improves the government's ability to mobilize quickly if the Iran conflict widens, because at any point it can make it here. It just hasn't. So for ordinary Americans, it adds a deep layer of background uncertainty because you have higher costs now, no clear path to victory, and more credible paths to a larger mobilization if this crisis escalates, right? So the war in Iran, which started as a foreign policy crisis, now casts a long shadow over the future of the entire generation that we have turning 18 and still under the age of 26 right now, bringing the cost of war home in the most personal ways possible. Because not everybody that goes out comes back. And that's one of the reasons why I asked y'all earlier, like if y'all after this year, if y'all plan on having kids, are y'all gonna teach them how to take care of themselves? Because me myself, I want to make sure that not only my sons but my daughters all know how to fight for themselves, how to defend. And I ain't talking about street fighting. I'm talking about some aggressive, unorthodox combat style stuff and utilization of firearms of all kinds, so that if and when they do get called to action against their will, that they can handle themselves out there. Because one of the worst things in the world is to be unprepared, drafted, and you have to get over your fears in combat instead of kind of working that shit out before you get drafted. You know what I mean? Being unprepared for shit. Now, as a parent, knowing what's going on in the current economy, this is one of those things that you teach your children financial responsibility, you teach your children combat skills, you teach your children firearms usage, and do it in a structured environment. Show that they can keep themselves safe here at home, but they can keep themselves safe if they go overseas. They can protect their assets, they can protect their wealth, and they can protect their person, and they can protect their family. This is stuff that we stopped teaching our kids. We didn't, our kids don't know none of it. Most of us over the age of 30 don't know none of this shit. If we didn't learn it from our own in-person experiences with life, nobody put us aside and say, hey, let me show you how to do X, Y, and Z. Right? They just didn't. So with the Islamabad talks in ashes and the April 22nd ceasefire deadline just around the corner, the question on everyone's mind is going to be simple. What's going to happen now? Military and geopolitical analysis are running through several scenarios, from the dangerous escalation to a desperate last minute attempt to save the talks. First scenario is the full scale blockade. This is going to seem to be the most immediate threat because President Trump had already said that he plans to order the United States Navy to immediately start a full blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And this would be a huge step up from the current mine clearing operation. Make no mistake, a blockade is an act of war. It would mean that the United States warships actively stopping any ship, commercial or military, from entering or leaving the strait at all costs. And this is going to be a direct challenge to Iran, but also to the rest of the world, especially China, which depends on oil shipments through the strait and has warned its access must be guaranteed. Iran's Navy chief has previously threatened to turn the strait into a deadly vortex for enemy forces. A full blockade could trigger a direct naval battle between the United States and Iran involving anti ship missiles, drones swarming, and fast attack boats in a very tight and dangerous space. That's a lot of our family members that's not making it back. Scenario number two, the war resumes. The 2 week ceasefire was just a pause, not an end to the war that started on February 28th. If the deadline passes with no new deal, the default option is to return to open conflict. We would likely see new rounds of US and Israeli airstrikes on targets inside of Iran, probably aimed at whatever's left, destroying its nuclear missiles, the missile silos, command centers. He did talk about taking out their largest power plants, and Iran would almost certainly unleash its full arsenal of missiles and drones against the United States military bases across the Gulf and against targets in Israel and other allied countries. The cycle of strike and counterstrike we saw for 6 weeks already would start all over again, likely with even more force and less restraint on both sides. You got to understand that while it hasn't happened yet, true military oppression would be destroying hospitals, schools, and power sources, water refineries, and everything to that effect. The very core structures of civilization. You can't recover from being attacked if you have no medical facilities. Nobody's going to be able to focus on their attacks if their kids are being blown up in daycare. The fact is that it could get really ugly if they really pull off the gloves and pull out all the stops and really go at it. Now, while I know we got some anti-missile stuff in McDill Air Force Base in Florida and some other things, We can't guarantee that everything that happens in Iran stays in Iran. So if everybody goes back to bombing everybody, while we are going to go on kind of on our day to day, in the back of our mind, we're always going to be wondering if I walk outside of my house, will I look up and see something coming down at me? Right? You're driving in traffic and you see a big bird flying overhead. You might just mistaken that it's an eagle, but for a moment there, you thought this was it. I'm being serious. Like the anxiety behind what could happen here is clear. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. The people closer to the water are going to be more afraid of what's happening than people towards the center. The people in Canada are not going to really feel as much threat as the people closest to the coast, but you still got something to worry about. Scenario number three, proxy war explodes. A return to direct fighting would almost certainly spill over across the entire region. The ceasefire was already shaky and didn't really cover Iran's proxy groups. Full scale escalation would see these proxy fronts burst into flames. We could expect Hezbollah to dramatically ramp up its attacks on Israel, possibly starting a full blown war in Lebanon. Uh, Houthi forces in Yemen could step up their attacks on shipping the Red Sea and on targets in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Pro Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria would likely restart and intensify their attacks on U.S. troops stationed out there. The conflicts would stop being a two sided fight and would turn into a multi front regional war. That is where I get truly concerned about the draft. Because if there's 5 or 7 countries that our troops are in at the same time, to keep conflict over there, we will pull more people from over here and send them over there in advance so that reinforcements are already on their way before troops start being depleted. And so don't got 3 months to train them, 90 days of boot camp. It's almost like pack your bags, you're going to Syria, or leave everything behind, you're going to Syria. And I just have a huge concern about that once this draft does take into effect. Now, scenario number four, completely different scenario, a diplomatic Hail Mary. This is what I would hope happens. But this is going to be where any hope left of a diplomatic solution would happen. It's going to be a long shot, but some analysts think there's still a sliver of chance. Pakistan has promised to keep trying to get a new dialogue going. Other regional players like Oman and even Russia have called for de escalation and offered to mediate. The key might be divisions inside the Iranian regime. Some reports suggest that while hardliners are ready for a fight, there might be a more pragmatic group that fears a wider war and might be willing to compromise if they're given a way to save face. Now, Vice President Vance deliberately left the final and best offer on the table and signed that the door will almost be shut. And it isn't locked yet, but it ain't really planning on like swinging back open 100-fold. It would probably take a major shock, a military close call, or a global economic crisis to force both sides back to the table with a more realistic expectation. Right now, though, all signs point to escalation. The rhetoric is angry, the militaries are ready for a fight, and the diplomatic exits are disappearing quickly. The world is holding its breath as the clock ticks down to April 22nd. and I'm going to be following this as time goes on. The situation is on a nice edge, and the fallout will be global. So, what do you think is the most likely outcome? Will President Trump go through the full Navy blockade? Can mediators like Pakistan pull the two sides back from the brink? Or are we about to see the start of a devastating regional war? Let me know what you think in the comments because this is a very complex story and your insights are a very valuable part of the conversation. And if you guys want to keep getting in depth analysis that goes beyond the headlines on critical world events like this one, make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you like the channel and then hit those notification buttons so that you never miss these updates. The collapse of the talks in Islamabad wasn't a surprise, but it's still a tragedy. It was a failure born from a decade of built up distrust and sealed by a war that has hardened everyone's positions. The proposals that were exchanged weren't serious attempts to compromise, they were declarations of two futures that simply can't exist at the same time. Iran laid out a vision where its regional power and nuclear ambitions were made legitimate and is able to have an economy that was set free from the previous restrictions. The United States laid out a vision where Iran was permanently disarmed and neutralized, neutered, if you will, as a threat. There was no middle ground between these two plans. The Strait of Hormuz is still a flashpoint, a physical symbol of this struggle for control. The nuclear program is still at the heart of the dispute, a symbol of both power and fear. And the economic and human costs keep piling up, felt not just in the war zone of the Middle East, but in the homes across America and around the world. So we are now in a moment of extreme dangers. The path of diplomacy seems closed, and the path of military escalations wide open. The decision made in Washington and Tehran over the next few days will decide whether the fragile ceasefire becomes the start of a new talk or just the quiet before a much bigger storm. The April 2020, the April 22nd deadline, 2026, isn't just another date on the calendar like it was with the shutdown. It is a, a principal date that needs to be paid attention to. The world will continue to watch and wait to see if we're all about to step over a line that we just can't uncross. And I got to tell you guys, as things progress further, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on what all is going on, and I will be able to give you some brief day to day at the top of our show updates on what all is I've been able to find out. And then as soon as we get a turnaround, I will be able to give you guys full details as to exactly what kind of chaos we're about to get ourselves into. It's things in our lives that we cannot control, but these are the things in our lives that we have to learn how to navigate around. This is why we give you guys all the information that we give you on a daily basis because certain parts of our future are out of our hands, and the rest is up to us to navigate. Now, that's actually all I have for you guys for tonight. I'm going to start by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you ladies to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, I give you all this information to make you guys higher value men, to aid you in your abilities to make better decisions about your lives. And we're going to be covering a lot more things tomorrow, Wednesday, about different ways to make, save, and invest money, different budgets. I actually just found out some information about how they are dismantling special education systems. And I might actually do a lot of talk about that tomorrow, just to let you guys know what's really going on with that as we continue to move forward, because this is huge changes. that are happening in such a short period of time. And we have to find the things that are inside of our control, fellas, and proactively change the things that we do not like to build ourselves a better lifestyle in the current environment that we're in, and then navigate around the things that are outside of our control. Now, ladies, while this is a male driven podcast from the male's perspective, you too can make yourself higher value women by taking apart the time to build what your 20 or 30-year life should look like. Reverse engineer the requirements for that so that you can have your to do list today and get things started right now. We're in the process of focusing on your goals that you are able to keep your eyes and ears open for the valid partners and suitors that have the right drive, personality, characteristics, ambition to aid you in your ability to achieve those goals where you're not riding on the coattails of someone else's success, that you are finding a reasonable partner that complement your success. Because two people can make it to a million faster than one. It is easier for a combined income, especially with the inflated United States market, to a combined income, a two household income, to live a modest, reasonable lifestyle without having to suffer and be able to invest the difference when you're living at less than 75% of your combined income. And that's not too much to ask if you're not dealing with lifestyle creep and poor choices. So with all of the other stuff that we're going to be covering for the rest of the week and every other day out of the week, every month out of the year, you guys can keep coming back and learning different ways to make different changes, because as you pivot and as you move, you will start finding yourself with more accessibility to capital, more accessibility to investments, more accessibility to generational wealth, more accessibility to solutions that will lead you to a position where you will no longer have to struggle. With or without the outcomes of this war, you will no longer have to struggle. And once you get to that point, that's when you will start seeing exactly what I've been talking about this whole time, that you have the ability, even at the bottom 25% of economy, to go from struggling in 30, 40, $50,000 a year lifestyles to living the life of Raleigh at 70, 80, $120,000 a year dividend payouts, or capital gains from real estate investments after you have put money aside that actually generates revenue instead of just spending every penny that you get. Because I can tell you right now, with the large quantity of people that's on the show right now, most of the people here cannot say that they've got $10,000 in the bank account right now. Especially if you just got called back off of being furloughed on the 10th, which was like Friday. Everybody lives from paycheck to paycheck. If we stop doing that one mistake, we will erase the poor class and have a middle and upper class. The working class should not be 84,000 a year or 79,000 a year, and that's $1,765 a week. And the average individual ultimately, how you doing, Aztec? Ultimately is currently making less than that. The average person, unless you're in California, New York, or something like that, the average person is not drawing back $1,000 a week on their paycheck, $2,500 biweekly paychecks with a $5,000 a month paycheck. Unless you're in California pulling that off, it's not likely happening all across America. The average person is $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Oh, yeah, where would you invest $100,000? Into a brokerage account? That is a 100% dividend paying brokerage account. I've got a lot of stocks going across the screen. If you look into the membership, I have selected about 16 or 17 specific stocks that'll give you the most growth and the most dividend return in the current economy that you can rebalance for good and bad seasons and have your capabilities of drawing back on average between 12 and 20%, which is more than the S&P 500's 10%, where likely your $100,000 a year will be drawing back like $12,000 to $15,000 of income. Now, people are going to say that's not a lot of money to get paid on a regular basis. But if that's 15,000 extra dollars a year on top of your annual salary, exactly how much benefit is that, right? And if you're able to build on that 100,000 to bring that 100,000 up to 3 to 500,000, that 15,000 a year turns into 75,000 a year. 20% is wild. 20% is volatile. And that's one of the reasons why you have 20% stocks that are 21% right now, real estate investment trusts and BDCs that are upward of 20%. You've got Prospect Capital, Orchid Island, Ellington Residential Trust is three of the ones that are holding the highest percentages right now. And then you have some of the other ones like AGNC and Arbor Realty, Arbor Residential that are holding closer to 15 and 16%. And depending on what type of portfolio that you have, the more diversified you have, the lower your interest rate average is going to be because you're going to be putting more into stability and less on growth. But if you have three real estate investment trusts that you can utilize to generate 20% returns, $100,000 on 20% returns, 21% returns. If you buy those shares today, that's 20 grand a year that you'd be getting off of those three stocks. And you could take that 20 grand and rebalance it on the other stuff. We got DHT, we got Johnson Johnson, we've got Shell, Chevron, Exxon Mobil. We got a lot of them up there that you can benefit from. And then ultimately, some of the stocks that we grabbed that were more tax friendly because the real estate investment trusts and BDCs are not going to be tax optimized, where it's the 0 to 22%. Instead, it's taxed regularly. So I was like, well, let's grab some stocks that are growth stocks that are giving you dividends that'll also qualify for that 0% taxation, which you'll be making less taxable income every month, but you'll be giving up less taxes every month, which kind of offsets itself in a little bit, you know. But the whole magnitude of it is that if you can put together a brokerage account that can put a lot of money in your pocket, and then you can take that capital and redirect it towards other things like real estate. Because if you have a $200,000 portfolio and you leverage 100 grand off of that, you can pay off that leverage with the profits from, because you can put that $12,000 a year onto the line of credit and take that 100 grand and go and buy you a house and then build it up. You know what I mean? Now, instead of you getting a credit check to borrow money from the bank, now you can just leverage your assets to get capital to start investing in things that turn the profit. Because instead of getting you a house for 100 grand, like Michael always says, take that 100 grand and go and put that towards a $500 or $700,000 like fourplex or quadruplex or something like that. Turnover revenue off of it. Is that this will go down as the world's greatest move? That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And if we get into it while everything is volatile, we will find ourselves in a position where we're going to benefit from the upswing. We are in the decline of the market. We are in the decline due to chaos, due to wars and everything to that effect. And all the rich people pulling their money out of these things. And if we're buying into it right now, while it's down, we're getting it at a cheap price, because these are stocks that used to be $30 a share and they're like $2 and some change a share. So when you were last at the and you bought that beer for $2.50 a beer, you bought your 6 beers for your buddies at $2.50 a beer. Those 6 beers were six shares that you could have bought of stock that you could have locked in, and you would have been good. Pack of cigarettes is like $15 these days. A pack of cigarettes for Ellington Residential is like what, $4.55 a share right now. A $15 pack of cigarettes, that would have been 3 shares of stock at 21%. I don't understand why people don't think about making better decisions with their lives, but I'm here to talk to y'all about it. He said gas bonus 2 dropped to $2 per gallon. If it would have dropped to $2 per gallon during the ceasefire, it's going to skyrocket right after they start blowing each other up. He says, damn, we need a tax guru along with the investment plan. Well, I've got Joe Mastrano that he can give you guys information about taxation. If you're ever interested, let me get you some information about Mr. Mastrano, because we got a lot of stuff up here as far as, bam, tax gurus. I know some folks. He was on the show. We covered him on the show a while back. He would be able to give you all of the information that you need to make yourself successful. He says the world was about to give Iran all the money and crash our dollar. You ain't lying, bro. They paying millions of dollars to sell they ship through there. Iran was about to make bank. Not anymore. Not anymore. They're gonna be building themselves back up. More ships coming to the Gulf of America right now. And but look, we got Venezuela. We're about to take Cuba. We started pumping our own oil out of Texas and Louisiana. We got some pipelines in Alaska. If they can't get it from Iran, they're gonna get it from us. So if we shut down the strait and they still need oil, they're gonna get it from us. So do we benefit from shutting down the strait if we don't control it? If I can't have you, no one will. This is like a a, a scorned lover. Epic. These are your thoughts on crypto. I already covered crypto last Tuesday. You need to watch last Tuesday's show. But crypto went from like 120,000 this time last year down to 60,000 right now. Should be closer to 55,000. Should level off in the next 2 or 3 weeks by the second or third week of May before it starts going back up. But it's down 50% right now. Should be at its lowest point down 55% before it starts going back up. If you're going to buy back into crypto, you want to wait till like the third week of May. But crypto is a growth stock. If you invest in crypto and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to lose your money and not be able to recoup it. When I talk to you guys, especially people starting up on investment, I tell you guys to put your money into a buy and hold cash dividend stock that pays you to keep it so that if you need money, you don't got to sell any shares. You can just get the dividends from holding the stock, which is a lot easier for beginners. Now, if you're an advanced investor, then go get you some crypto. If you've got the risk threshold, the risk tolerance, buy you some gold and silver, uranium and shit. But I mean, if you're trying to invest in some stocks in my membership, I got a lot of these stocks going across the screen, but in the membership, I got the dates approximation of projections of when some of these stocks are about to start paying dividends. So you could buy some of those today and by the end of the month get paid. So you start feeling your investments when you put your money into a stock or a bond or something like that that actually will pay you back in the next 30 days. And then you're like, oh man, if I put more money down, I'll get more money back next month. Because I put up a bunch of monthly stocks and then some quarterly stocks to give you an equal feeling of how this works. And when you've got quarterly stocks that offset one another, one pays on January, one pays on February, one pays in March, you're now getting paid every month. You start getting monthly payouts and quarterly payouts that offset on a regular basis where you're getting money on a regular basis. Now you feel better about investing in yourself because when you put $5,000 in the Bank of America and you made $10 off of that in 5 years, you don't feel like investment is benefiting you. When you put your money into a CD, it's tied up for a year or so, and you finally get your 4%, and the inflation took the value of your money. You don't feel like you got something. He said, Cat 5 typhoon in Atlantic too. It's gonna knock all them ships out. Ships can't go through the straits. So when Trump park his trucks there and say fuck y'all ain't coming in, they're not gonna make it. They're not gonna make it back. But the fact is that when you're looking at the CDs and oh it's not beneficial for you, then when you start looking into things like treasury bonds, and treasury bonds are good. They're tax averted and stuff to that effect. IRAs and 401ks, they're very good. They're tax deferred. Health savings accounts, they're very good. They're tax deferred. But there's certain things that you just can't fuck with till you're after 65. If you're in your 20s, you don't feel like this is a benefit to you investing. You don't feel like in your 30s that this is a benefit to invest in you. But if you start investing in this shit right now with these cash paying stocks that I'm telling you about, you at 20 years, 25 years, 30 years old feel the benefit today. You feel the benefit today. You feel the benefit this year. And then you're able to say, okay, let me double down on this. Let me triple down on this. Let me take a third of my income and put on this instead of spending it at the club, instead of spending it on dating chicks that don't want me, that I'm only going to use to get laid with, instead of wasting it on homeboys to impress folks, instead of lifestyle creep. My neighbor got a new car. I got to get a new car too. Fuck that shit. I want to keep a 25, 30-year-old vehicle and take that money and put it somewhere. He said, oh, yeah, yeah. He said, take 30,000, open money market account and get a reward. But see, you take 30,000 and put it into a money market account. Money market accounts aren't giving you 5%. But if you take 30,000 and put it into a brokerage account that's producing, like I told you, upward of 20%, that 30,000 could be giving you 6,000 a year. And then as you diversify that shit and start putting it towards more stable stocks, it's probably going to have lower interest rates paid out to you, but it's going to give you more growth, which will allow you to borrow against your stone without having to worry about being taxed for selling shit. That that 6,000 a year come back on 30 grand in a brokerage account is not going to be the same as putting it into a money market account that's going to give you like 3 or 4% return. See what I'm saying? A money market account or a high interest savings account is going to be giving you 3 to 4% after they slashed in December the interest rates, which is why more people are buying houses right now. After they slashed the interest rates, saving in a bank is not as beneficial as investing in the stock market. Stock market is more volatile, but if you're buying into a blue chip company, been around 25, 30 years, those companies are not likely to go bankrupt in the current economy. So even though the share price is low, the dividend payout is guaranteed. If the stock goes up in price because of the economy getting better, your dividend price is guaranteed. But if the stock goes down in price, you can buy the shit cheaper. Companies not going out of business. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. And that's something that you're not going to get from Bitcoin because Bitcoin went down, lost 60 grand. If you had 60 grand invested in that, if you had 120 grand invested in that, you lost 60 grand, you're not getting it back. If you bought gold and silver, it took 25 years for it to get to where it is right now. Back in the day, it used to be worth $200. 25 years later, that's a whole lifetime later. It's now worth almost 5 grand. You got to wait a whole lifetime for gold and silver to make it somewhere. But if you put 30 grand into a brokerage account, by the end of the year, you're like, fuck, I made a bunch of money. There's a dividend rotation strategy that I had put up there that if you guys follow the dividend rotation strategy, you would be doubling your money, 168% return. On average, even if you take in your losses, a 70% return, which means that you will put your money up into the brokerage account, move your money around, and then every month you're hitting 5, 7, 10 different stocks that's going to pay you every month because it doesn't matter if it's a quarterly stock or a monthly stock. If you're going to hit it a week before, 5 days before the ex dividend date, you get paid for holding that cash stock. You sell it the day after, and then you keep moving. Is I hope these young folks are listening. I hope they're listening too. Y'all need to be liking, subscribing, mashing those reaction buttons. Y'all need to be following through. I started this show 2 hours ago. I'm here every night of the week talking about stuff like this so that you guys know that there is another way. If you had access to 30 grand, if you got a settlement in a car crash and you put it into your brokerage account instead of paying for lifestyle creep, you will stop suffering. You know what I mean? He said, I didn't have this type of information available to me growing up. Most people didn't. And that's why I started this show 3 years ago, because I want people, this is common knowledge, bro. You can Google this shit. You can no lie. Get on your iPhone right now, because most of y'all don't have a Samsung. Get on your iPhone right now, ask the Google lady, and Google lady will verify what I'm telling y'all, bro. This is no joke. Like y'all will be able to make yourselves less broke. You borrow from Scott and all those payday loans. You no longer got to bum money off your friend. You no longer got to bum money off your spouse. You no longer got to bum money off your mom and dad and them. And you will be able to build a life based on your own sustainability. This is what we talk about on the show. And when you're building a 20-year plan, bro, you're investing in your future. Where in 30 years, if you can make yourself a millionaire in 20 to 25 years just by taking 30% or 25% of your income and investing it instead of wasting it on bullshit. Because think about this, 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes every day, a case of beer every day is roughly about $25,000 a year worth of wasted money just to entertain yourself, just to get your smoky smoke on, just to get your drinky drink on. And that's if you're not smoking weed. I ain't even gonna talk about the felony status. I'm gonna talk about how ounces are starting to cost almost 200 something dollars an ounce, and some business can smoke an ounce in less than a week. When you start talking about $1,000 for weed, and you start talking about $15,000 a year for weed, and then you start talking about $100 a bottle for Patron, and you start talking about $15,000 on that on alcohol, and then you start talking about you was bottles on me and drinks on the club and this, that, and the third, but you spent $30,000 on entertainment. That $30,000 you could have put into a brokerage account. You do that for 10 years, that's $300,000 plus interest, which would likely at 20% of the time potentially put that $300,000 start paying you fucking upward of 60,000 a year, where in 20 years you would be upward of uh 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 750 to $1 million inside of 20 years, $1.5 million inside of 25 years. So by the time if you started doing this at 20, 25, 30, and you did this for 20 years, by the time you 45, 50, 60, before you even qualify for Social Security, you would be making more money off your brokerage account than what disability would be giving you when you can't work no more. That's what people don't tell you. That's what people don't get you to understand. You can build your own wealth. And with what Trump is doing right now, tearing down the Department of Education, rerouting everything to privatized health insurances, you're not getting shit. Social Security, disability is guaranteed to the elderly. Veterans benefits is guaranteed to the troops, and everybody else has got to figure it the fuck out. All of the benefits that was given to you from the Democrats, when everybody say the Democrats are fucking idiots, the Democrats is giving you all the relief that everybody who makes less than 50,000 a year benefited from. Donald Trump is taking that shit away. You're gonna have to earn it some kind of way. And with AI taking over the working class, by the time you reach 60, computers are going to be doing your job. So you're not going to be able to quit your job and get another one because you're going to get fired because iRobot just took your job with a Tesla emblem on his chest and a Digitech emblem on his ass being shipped in from Boston Dynamics. And you're going to be wondering where the fuck the economy went, talking about some Mexicans took your job. The Mexicans don't even know how to make the machines that replace your ass. The Mexicans got shipped to goddamn Iran because the undocumented people are being drafted too. So the Mexicans ain't gonna take your job. The goddamn robot is gonna take your job. You know what I mean? Steven said, I'm excited to get started soon. You know, I'm in the market through my 401k now, and I will be more diversified. And dividends sound awesome. Dividends are fucking amazing, bro. I had started when I started doing this last year, and I started talking to y'all about it this time last year. I had doubled my money by December. I had started halfway through the year, and I had doubled my money by December. That's why I was like, nah, this is gonna work, bro. This is gonna work, bro. I did it. Then I told y'all about it. He said, Floyd Money Mayweather needs to hear your advice. He's going through a lot of financial woes and lists $1 billion due to lifestyle. But Floyd Mayweather was spending $10,000 a night in a strip club in Miami. When he had $10,000 a night in a strip club, he should have had his billions of dollars in a brokerage account, throwing back at least 15% return, where he would have been getting, $150 million a year off of his, where he could have then took 10,000 a night and threw that because that would have been the interest, not the principal. Most folks believe pay down all your debt fast, right? And then start trying to build your future. But when you take your principal and you put it on debt, your principal is gone. Now you got to go back and make the principal again. If you take your principal and put it on your brokerage account and then take the interest from your brokerage account and then pay your debt, your principal is still there. The difference between broke people and their decision making with spending money and rich people and their ability to spend money, what they do is they pay themselves first. They put all their money into their stocks first, and then they take the dividends and they pay their debt. They'll get a loan on the debt and then put everything into the brokerage, take the brokerage and pay the loan. So they're not paying the debt right now. They're paying the debt later. Broke people are afraid of debt. Middle class people try their best to pay off all of the debt and live debt free and believe that that's the way to be. But billionaires, for every $1 billion of debt a billionaire has, they have $1 billion worth of capital and assets. On paper, they're at $0. Take Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit. That man started at 22 with a $50,000 a year job. He's 36 from $1 million. Brokerage account, real estate investments, all of that stuff. Yeah, he got a lot of money off of YouTube before YouTube blocked him, but that motherfucker got $8 million right now at 36 years old. I'm 41. He got more money than me in 10 years. From 22 to 36, it wasn't 10 years, it was like 14 years, but $8 million in 14 years. It's doable. Instead of all that money he was getting from YouTube wasting it on lifestyle creep, and like you said, MC Hammer 2.0, MC Hammer, bro, spending all the money on bullshit, he put the money in places where money made money for him. So even after he stopped doing YouTube, he's still getting paid. He don't have to work. He's already rich. Then he can get endorsement deals. He can get money from everywhere else. He's writing books and everything to that effect because he ain't got to do nothing. short money versus long money. That's right. That's right. And that's what people don't pay attention to. And this is what we cover on the show. So throughout the week, if you look at, we've got a massive catalog of information. I want to say it goes as far back as at least August of 2024 when I really started going into the financing and really started taking this podcast seriously to tell you guys, hey, with the upcoming regime that we're about to have, the next 4 years is going to be completely capitalism. Let me teach you guys how to change the way you do you and start thinking like a capitalist. And once I started doing that, I was just like, damn, there's so many ways that we could not be broken. We didn't know about it. And then I just started going all in. So there are so many videos that are archived right now that you can easily access on this podcast. Trust, LLCs, offshore bank accounts, international investing, all kinds of stuff that you guys can do. That, and then in the membership, there's details where whatever's not on the video is in the membership where y'all can figure things out. By the time you get to a financial advisor, you got 95% of the shit you need to do what you got to do. They're only going to spend 30 minutes to iron it out. Is that when you say brokerage account, you mean like Vanguard ETFs? When I say brokerage accounts, I mean stocks, I mean ETFs, I mean everything. I'm talking about everything, bro. Tesla, everything. Netflix, everything. When I say brokerage account, I mean everything that you can put your money towards a company's whatever platform they got going on and get paid for them holding on to your cash. Now, with modern day fintech, you can do it in ETF form where you don't have to do a TD Ameritrade and buy 100 shares of stock in a company and hold it and wait for it to come. But you can. You can, but TD Ameritrade might actually charge you a lot of money for each transaction, which you might not want to pay for. But there's other fintech, like I have Stash App, and I've got the links to that in the membership as well, where you guys can get extra money for signing up. But the fact is that um, if you use ETFs, you can put your money up towards the value of shares. That's what an ETF is, and then you put your money up towards the value of the shares. And after you put it up towards the value of the shares, you can still benefit from the dividends that come from that share. So just like a marginalized Bitcoin, you don't have $60,000 of Bitcoin. One Bitcoin for $60,000. You might have $2,000. But if you put up $2,000, that percentage of Bitcoin, when it goes up, you're going to get that percentage increase, right? If it goes up 10%, your version will go up 10%. Your $2,000 will go up 10%, right? With ETF trading, stocks, bonds, and everything to that effect, you're capable of putting your money up there. And instead of you buying 100 shares of Tesla stock, you can buy 62.5 shares of Tesla stock and get whatever the growth is supposed to be by then. That's what I'm trying. That which is way better. Instead of I don't need to have all of it. If all I got is $100 worth, I can give you $100 worth. Give me my $20. You know, people don't think about that part, and that's why I've been telling people forever, like, bro, you got to get in on this, bro. You got to get in on it. You got to get in on it while the war is still happening because all of the stocks are so low. First of all, real estate investment trusts are going to lose capital value right now on the share call because the troops are going overseas, so ain't nobody paying fucking rent. Boom. This is how the war impacts your stock investments. BDCs, employees is disappearing. So the work isn't going the way it was supposed to be going. You're looking at a change in interest rates and loans and mortgages and everything to that effect as the stock values are going down because of the war. You can buy these companies because those motherfuckers are still open. They're still operating. Businesses that are negatively impacted because the shutdown of DHS, when DHS opens back up and everybody starts going to work every day and starts spending money again, that's when you start seeing BDCs, small businesses that was benefiting from the feds coming to their shops. Those stocks are going to start going back up. If you buy the stocks before the workers start getting paid, you can have the stocks dirt cheap. Then when the shit starts going up in value, that's when you're like, damn, I got growth and I got dividends, right? And that's what people don't pay attention to. Because Tesla is the new Apple. Tesla is a very volatile stock. Tesla is going to be the new Terminator. That's what Tesla is going to be the new Skynet. That's what Tesla is going to be. But at the same time, because there are other stocks, like I would say, instead of buying into Tesla stock, I would have bought in. I've already bought into Oracle stock. I would have bought an Oracle stock if I would have been talking to you in November. I would have told you to buy an Oracle stock before Oracle started operating the cloud system for TikTok when the United States has 51% of shares in TikTok. You don't have to invest in TikTok. You invest in Oracle because Oracle holds the data space. That's where you make your money at. And Oracle is a dividend paying stock. That's shit that people don't think about. You ain't gotta always go and put your money on the mine. You put your money on the picks and shovels. You said which AI stock? Oracle. All right, Aztec, Oracle. It's up there on. It's going across the screen. I got a lot of this stuff. Uh, HST, Host Hotels Resort. That's one of them. Johnson and Johnson. Uh, Oracle Corporations, ORCL. That's the one that I'm recommending that you go towards. Uh, Broadcam Incorporated, AVGO. That's another one that's really good for you to get into right now, which are dividend paying stocks. These are ones that are going across the screen. And you could double check them. You can double check them, and you will see that if you was to swing your hammer on your phone and go over there and go ask the Google lady gonna tell you the same thing. Oracle is doing a damn good job right now. Oracle is projected for growth. Um, 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 Broadcam is projected for growth. I got DHT up there, which is the tankers. DHT is the ships that are going to be transporting the oil. So if he's closing the strait, guess who gets to get a good deal on buying the tanker company? Us. If Donald Trump closes off the strait, right after the strait closes, DHT stock is going to go down. And when DHT stock goes down, you buy that bitch. Then when the strait opens up and everybody starts seeing that 20% of oil flowing around, DHT stock gonna go up. Shell, Chevron, ExxonMobil, the oil in Venezuela. Johnson and Johnson, long-standing company. Everybody's gonna be running out there buying paper towels, toilet papers and shit. Johnson and Johnson, I heard yields higher because they have so many workers get paid less in Dominican Republic. I am not capable of talking about ethics when I'm talking about capitalism. Reason being is because capitalism is going to capitalize on somebody else. Usually, either the ignorant, the weak, or the desperate. Typically, however you want to figure it out, that's usually where it's at. So anybody who's desperate is going to put a lot more effort, a lot less money because they need money. And big business is going to benefit off of that. People who are weak are going to pay extra money to get stuff done for them because they don't have the strength to get it done themselves. And people who are stupid or lazy or irresponsible are going to pay somebody else to do the things for them that they don't know how to do or they just simply don't want to do. And those pain points come at a price, and there's a stock market for that price. And then I am going to invest in that pain point because that's how I make money sitting in this chair instead of flipping burgers at a McDonald's or some shit, right? Instead of kissing somebody else's ass for them to be sipping Mai Tais on a yacht in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, I'm going to invest in some shit that is happening on the other side of the world so that I can make some damn money. Because what did I told y'all that when I covered this, I wasn't covering this from a political perspective. I just told y'all they're fighting over oil. I'm telling you about oil stocks to invest in. Shipping containers that are not moving, not shipping the oils. I'm telling you about the stock that has that actually does the shipping. Zim stock also does international shipping, but the oil tankers are DHT stock. I'm telling you, this is how the money is impacted by what's going on with the political disarray. The geopolitical conflict is not as much my importance as the stocks that I'm going to invest in because of the geopolitical topic. Now, yes, I'm going to feel a little bit bad if one of my kids or one of my grandkids get enlisted in the army, but I'm going to feel really good about the military stocks that I invested in when they start the cyber tech that I'm going to invest in so that when they start going over there with the drones, every time they blow up a drone, they're building another drone. Every time they build another drone, the stock market for the drone goes up. So uh Yes, I would have been one of the people in 9/11 that would have been pissed off that my Amazon shipment didn't make it to my house that day, as opposed to being disappointed about the lives that were lost in that crash. And anybody who hates my guts because of that, I'm just going to tell you, you're not being realistic. At the end of the day, you have to understand that catastrophe impacts everybody differently. Sometimes it impacts your emotions, sometimes it impacts your heart and soul, your family members, but sometimes it just impacts your fucking wallet. It impacts your rent, light, gas, and water. It impacts the gas in your car. It impacts how you get to and from work every day. But however it impacts you, you have to learn how to navigate around that because this is shit that is outside of your control. He said, never heard anyone talk like this straight, bro. Every day, this is what we do. We talk about the bullshit. Like for example, because I strongly believe that tomorrow I'm just going to go ahead and talk about how they're defunding special education, which is like all of the disabled kids. They're defunding that, and I've been telling y'all real quick. Public school. Everybody don't like public school. They throw their kids in public school and leave it like a free babysitter. And people want higher value education for their kids, so they pay extra money to put their kid in private school. And I tell y'all all the time, since you didn't know about this, I just want you to pay attention real quick. Public school is a nonprofit entity. Under the tax law, public school can get you a deduction on your taxes. So instead of spending 1,500 a semester on private school, why not spend 1,500 a semester on public school? The Department of Education is no longer funding public school. Public school is now being funded by the Small Business Administration, SBA. Why not give your tax dollars directly to the school that your child go to instead of giving it to Uncle Sam for them to spend $500 million a month rebuilding Iran? Then not only will your kid's school have more resources, your kid will be respected by the teachers and the principal because you are spending more money in that school than most of the other parents that go to that school. Then at the end of the day, your kid is not going to get picked on by the teachers. They're not going to be talking smack to your child, and your child is less likely to have bullies in the school because your kid has a parent that is paying the fucking school board. Your kid gonna be big dick on campus, and you're getting it as a tax deduction. So it's not like you're missing out on the money. You put up $5,000 or $10,000 on the school and pay for the school's fucking basketball team or some shit. Get your receipt and put that shit on your damn taxes. If you owed the government $20,000, they just took 10,000 off. And when you do a donation like that, it carries over every year for 5 years until you use the whole amount or the 5 year expiration date. So if you donate whatever you would have paid in taxes to your local school can now have the MacBook computers that's in the private schools. Your local school can now have teachers not getting paid 35 and 40,000 a year, but 70 and 80,000 a year, so that the teachers would want to come to school. Then think about the fact that in these public schools, those 35 and $45,000 a year teachers are taking $10 to $15,000 out of their paycheck to buy school supplies for the poor kids because the poor kids' parents don't buy school supplies. They send the kids to school with no school supplies and expect the school to provide the supplies to the kids. And the teachers who are there because they want the children to succeed are doing it undervalued, underfunded, and then taking money out their own paycheck to make sure that the children succeed. Why don't y'all show them teachers some love and say, well, let me give you something so that you can stop taking your paycheck and paying for my damn child? You'll pay for a babysitter. Why not pay for the fucking school? This is logic. And it only comes from this and that, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. But this is logic that benefits your finances. This is logic that benefits the next generation. This is logic that is supposed to be passed down from generation to generation, but it stopped being passed down in 2009 when the internet started becoming a thing. And now people do scroll for girls shaking their behind on social media and conflict. Doesn't matter what kind of conflict. Bunch of kids fighting. It could be a police traffic stop that gone wrong. A motorcycle is doing something stupid. Somebody breaking into somebody's house. It's always conflict. But nobody ever doom scrolls for a podcast that can help them improve their finances. Nobody does that. You know what I mean? And while Joe Biden's method was off kilter when he was talking about the algorithm before China got bought out, China, people scroll for educational purposes. America, we Scroll for lust, greed, and violence. No matter what the algorithm looks like, if the same shaking your booty videos is showing up on your feed in 2026, that was the same shaking your booty videos that was showing up on your feed in 2024. It is not the algorithm that is not helping you find better content. It's you. The algorithm is a machine. The algorithm doesn't control what you look at, you do. The algorithm's job is to keep you on the platform longer. Whatever it's got to do to keep you on the platform longer. YouTube is the same way. But the difference is with YouTube, I'm up here for 2.5, 3 hours. You're here for an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes because I said some shit that made sense to you. And you stayed because I'm not an overly attractive hot chick. You're here because I'm talking logic. I'm talking reason, rationale. I'm talking money. I'm talking about how you could do better about you. And you stayed for that. And then you'll come back tomorrow and the next day and every day after that because I'm talking about shit that makes sense to you. It's a different topic every day. So I don't even have a fan system that's just here for a specific type of topic. It's a different motherfucking topic every day. So some days we hit big and some days we don't. Some people are like, oh, I don't need that. Then they go and watch the replay. But it's all the same everywhere else. You know what I mean? And this is crazy. This is crazy because if we spent more time looking for ways to better ourselves, this podcast will have 10 million viewers. But you notice that podcasts like the Whatever Podcast and Fresh and Fit got 10 million plus subscribers, where 1% or 0.1% of their following, which is almost like 100,000 people a month, that is watching their shit because they're watching a bunch of attractive women make an ass out of themselves. You're not learning nothing from that type of podcast. I don't got no beef against those guys, but you're not learning nothing about yourself from those types of podcasts. Now, while some of that shit I do agree with, it's just the fact that I go there and I'm not learning nothing about how to do better about me. But when I this podcast, you come here and it's all about doing better about you. Everything comes from first person accountability on this podcast. That's why I'm not a left or a right. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not a red pill, blue pill, black pill podcast. This is a podcast about first person accountability, self development, self improvement, not only in your personal life, but also in your professional life, which aids you in your ability to change the shit in your life that you don't like. I don't know what that is. You do. But you know if there's something in your life that pisses you off, that you could have did something about and you ain't did nothing about it, but it pissed you off. It's some shit that happened last year that's still happening this year. Some shit that happened 2 years ago that just happened last week. You know what I'm talking about, and you ain't put no effort into changing that. I'm telling you, man, there's been so many different ways, and I've been talking about how you could have changed that already, and you just didn't. He said, I look forward to growing with you. Thank you truly. Oh, I'm gonna be here every night of the week, man. So look, that's all I got for y'all for tonight because I don't do a fluff piece. I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna I'm not a motivational speaker per se, but I do motivate you to do better about yourselves. Right? At the end of the day, once I run out of real time information for you guys, I wrap this show up. I'm not gonna be sitting over here just sipping on a scissor and listening to music in the background. I'm gonna tell you this is how you're gonna fix yourself, and then it's your choice to make the change. If you want more information and more details on stuff, go into the membership. Steven will tell you every couple days I'm dropping stuff into the membership. And if he asks for something because he's in the membership, I throw extra stuff in the membership just because he asked for it. The things that you're not going to find from a financial advisor, the things you're not going to find from a life coach, the things you're not going to find from a tax lawyer, the things you're not going to find from an estate lawyer, I'm finding that shit. And then I'm putting it somewhere where you can go back and look for it, put all the information together, do your research. And when you do go to a paid professional, instead of you spending 4 hours where they're going to spend 3 hours convincing you to stay with them, you're going to go there for 1 hour where 20 minutes of it is you telling them exactly what the fuck you want because you put it together. You got your 300 pages worth of this is what I want to do, and 30 minutes of them giving it to you. That's it. Doesn't matter if you pay 250 bucks or 300 bucks. You're going to be there for 1 hour because you already know what the fuck you want. You just want to make sure that they know what you want. And it shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes to explain it since you knew what you were doing when you walked in. I got to tell you, there's a lot of times I got lawyers that tell me I should have went to law school. Fuck that. I don't want to represent somebody else's shit. I represent myself. But I also know for a long time, I have dedicated myself to one logic and one logic only. My legacy is the success of the people around me. Therefore, in order for me to have a legacy that outstands its test of time, I have to build the kind of legacy where the people around me will forever be able to tell their kids and their grandkids that they came to this and that, where this and that was talking about this, that, and everything in between. And they learned all of the things that they are teaching their kids right now, that Xander taught them some shit that they did not know about before they came to this podcast, that they learned, they grow, they went from being 40, $50,000 a year people, and they ended up in a position where they are now making bank. You don't have to uh, uh, you don't have to work for nobody else. You can start up your own business. You can teach your kids how to be financially responsible. You can teach your kids about valuing quality, not name brands. You can save money on that, because instead of them fighting you for fucking $300 pair of Jordans, you can show them how a $50 pair of Doc Martens will outlast a pair of Jordans and save you $300. You can teach your kids how to be responsible before they start deliberately being irresponsible. Because one thing better than having a kid that you can always count on is having a kid that you know will never disappoint you, because of the fact that you taught them all the ways to do right instead of only disciplining them doing wrong. When you only discipline your kids for doing wrong, what they're going to do is find ways to not get caught. If you always teach your kids the right ways to perform, and you're always able to give them positive reinforcement and positive praise because they're always doing right, they're going to find more ways to receive that positive praise by doing more things that they know that you expect of them, which makes it easier for you to aid them in being a better person, because not only do they see the benefit in how you treat them, they see the benefit in their results and how they perform in their life. Now they're going to look down on the bad ideas from the bad friend instead of them joining with. Y'all remember when we used to get ass whoopings back in the day because we went with our friends and did something stupid? We came back home, and it's not because we did it. It's because when we came back, we didn't know why we did it. We caught the ass whooping because we didn't know why we was out there doing something stupid. If we would have had a logical explanation for it, they might have would have let us slide. But because they asked, what the fuck was you jumping off of bridges with your friend for? Oh no, he jumped. That's what we got our ass whooped for, being a follower. But a leader is going to say, nah, man, this is stupid. I can break my leg and cost myself a bunch of money. I don't need to be out here doing this. I need to be over here starting up a business and selling lemonade outside of a courthouse or some shit. That is going to be the difference between a type of child that's going to be financially successful as a second generation wealth versus the type of child that's going to be in and out of prison, on the stoop, smoking weed all day, working for a manual labor job till they get replaced by robots, never amounting to anything, always falling into debt, 3-time bankruptcy. But remember, Donald Trump went bankrupt 6 times before he became a multi-billionaire. So the difference between going bankrupt and living in your mama house at 55 versus going bankrupt and then buying Disney World and CNN and NBC is the difference in the decisions that you make. So that's where I'm going to put the pin in it for tonight. I want to thank y'all one more time for coming to this and that. Y'all remember that we typically started about 20 to 30 minutes after the hour because of daylight savings time, but outside of daylight savings time, we're typically about 5 minutes at the top of the hour. If you hit the notification button, you will see us coming live as soon as we go live. So make sure that you're here every night of the week as often as possible so that you can get all of the other information that you need to make better decisions. I want to thank y'all again for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see you guys tomorrow night.
Chase validation, now I validate my
That's my personal command. I'm not mounted on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.